the true story of the human barbecue sandwich serial killer who fed his victims to the public. His name was Joe Metheny. When Joe turned 18, he joined the army. While in the army, Joe began getting into hard substances. When he left the army, he did not go back to his regular life. He continued to use hard substances, which led him to become a drifter. He lived this lifestyle for years after. In his late 30s, he met a lady who was also a hard substance user and drifter, which he later got pregnant. The next few years, Joe tried to become a good father and boyfriend, trying to get clean from the hard substances, working good job as a truck driver, and providing a home for his girlfriend and son. Everything changed in 1994, one summer night when Joe was arriving home from a long week on the road, only to find that his home was empty, realizing that his girlfriend had left him taking their son with her, and he later found out she left him for another man. Joe had a complete mental breakdown from losing his son. This led Joe to start using hard substances again, ultimately losing his job, home, and becoming a drifter once again. For months, Joe would search for his son, and finally he heard from a friend that his girlfriend and her new boyfriend had gotten arrested, losing hers and Joe's son to foster care. Joe was hopeless since the foster care would not release his son to him since he was a drifter and an addict. Joe hated them and decided that they had to be unalived a while past. Then Joe heard word from a friend that his girlfriend and her new boyfriend had been released from prison and were planning on going under a bridge to buy some substances, so Joe had an idea to be there when they went. Joe had an axe planning to unalive them when he saw them, but to Joe's surprise, he only found two homeless men laying on a mattress, and he could tell they were on hard substances. Joe desperately tries to get information out of the men about the whereabouts of his girlfriend. The men broke and told Joe that she had just been there buying and using hard substances with them earlier, but left right after. With built-up rage, Joe decided to take out his anger on the two men, leaving their unalived bodies on the mattress. Joe's anger still ran rampant, ultimately unaliving two street workers. While trying to dispose of their bodies in a nearby river, a worker nearby saw him, so to not have any witnesses. Joe also unalived him and disposed of him and the two street workers in the river. 3 weeks later, the two men on the mattress were found, and Joe was brought into custody, which he was later acquitted and released back onto the streets. Joe stopped searching for his son, but he still felt anger towards his girlfriend, which is the time that Joe began to kill for his own enjoyment, luring women, promising to give them hard substances and unaliving them. On one of these instances, Joe was on very hard substances, and when he unalived one of his victims, he was so out of it, he decided to eat his victim and ended up enjoying the experience. Around this time, Joe decided to open up a barbecue stand on the side of the road where he sold barbecue sandwiches. But not just any sandwiches, his secret ingredient was his victims. Joe would butcher the bodies, mince them up and mixed it with pork, and making them into chopped brisket sandwiches. Joe later confessed that his customers, not knowing what was in them, really enjoyed his sandwiches, so much so that he had repeat customers. One day Joe lured a woman with plans of essay her, then threatening to bury her with the rest of his victims. Luckily for this woman, she fought back and just barely escaped. Joe feared that this woman would come back with police, so in a panic, he had to get rid of the evidence, which was the bodies he buried in the land on which the trailer house he lived was. But Joe did not own this trailer house. It was being lent to him by his boss, so Joe called up one of his friends to help him, but this friend took one look at the scene, told Joe he had to do something first and that he'd be back. His friend ended up going to Joe's boss and telling him that Joe had buried bodies in his land. But Joe's boss was already being investigated by the FBI, which he knew about, and told Joe's friend to forget anything that happened, since he already had the FBI breathing down his neck. Ultimately, the boss' son was helping the FBI, which ended up getting Joe and his boss caught and sent to prison. Joe was confessed to everything he could remember, since he did not remember half of his crimes from being on hard substances when committing them. Joe was given the death penalty, which was later overturned and was sentenced to life in prison. This gruesome serial killer then unalived from old age in 2017, where his and his thoughts of selling human barbecue sandwiches laid to rest. What are your thoughts on this monster and his heinous acts? Follow for more videos like this and leave suggestions for the next summarized crime.